There are certain moments in life that don't feel real when they happen. You freeze, not because you're calm, but because every part of your soul is silently screaming. I remember that night like a scar that never fully healed. Our third wedding anniversary. We were sitting across from each other at a candle-lit table, the kind with overpriced wine and napkins folded like tiny swans. I was wearing the red silk dress he picked out weeks before. He said it made me look dangerous. But that evening, it didn't feel like romance. It felt like a performance I didn't audition for. I wasn't feeling well. The cramps had started that morning, slow and stabbing. My period had arrived on time, like it always did. I told him gently over breakfast. His eyes narrowed, just for a second. Then he smiled like he hadn't heard me. At the restaurant, I tried to enjoy the moment. I really did. But I kept shifting in my seat, clutching my stomach under the table. When he reached across to hold my hand, I forced a smile. He squeezed it. Hard. "You're distant tonight," he said, frowning. "I told you. I'm not feeling—" "It's our anniversary," he cut in. "Can't you just push through it?" I didn't answer, because anything I said would have felt like I was apologizing for bleeding. Again. Back home, the candles were already lit in the bedroom. He'd laid out wine, music, that red lace lingerie he liked so much. I stood in the doorway and said, quietly, "Liam, tonight's not a good night. I don't feel okay." He didn't respond. He just walked up behind me, started kissing my neck. And I remember the tone in his voice when he said, "Come on, don't ruin this, just relax." I didn't. Not then. Not even when he laid me down like it was his right. And when I whispered, "Please, not tonight," he only pressed harder. "I've waited for this," he said coldly. "We're married. Don't act like some prudish girl." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just went still, because it was him. The man who used to text me, "Come home safe," after every shift. The man who promised, "Even at your worst, I'll love you." But that night, he loved no one, not me, not even the version of me he thought he married. When it was over, I turned my face to the wall, silent. I felt the wetness. Not just tears, but blood. I knew what he'd see. He pulled away, looked down at the sheets. Then he sneered. "This is sick. You should have warned me. I can't believe you let me do that." Let him? He walked into the bathroom like he'd touched something filthy. Slamming the door behind him, I lay there, blank. No words, no thoughts, just the sound of running water and a part of me breaking. The next morning, he was back to his usual self, smiling, charming, acting like nothing happened. I was still shaking. 1 week later, I got an envelope at work. Divorce papers. No conversation, no explanation. Just his signature at the bottom and a note scribbled in the corner. "You're too much work. I need someone who isn't broken." I stared at that note, and I swear, something in me snapped clean in two. Not in grief, but in clarity, because when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Then show them who you can become without them. He thought he left me in pieces, but the version of me he broke, she's the one who came back to bury him, without lifting a single finger, because I don't chase closure. I become it. And that was just the beginning. Before Liam, I used to be color, bright, messy, bold. I'd lose myself in paint for hours, hands stained, soul free. Art was where I breathed, but somewhere between wedding vows and broken promises, I stopped painting, and I didn't even notice. Liam didn't enter my life like a villain. He arrived like a fantasy. Bouquets left at my doorstep, handwritten notes that made me blush, expensive dinners where he told me I was the kind of woman a man builds his world around. I believed him. God, I believed him. And in the beginning, he really did make me feel special. Every door opened, every photo liked, every compliment delivered with a smile that felt like a secret just for me. I remember the night he proposed. Soft music, fairy lights, a ring tucked inside the dessert. I said yes before I even tasted it. And I thought that moment was the start of something magical. It wasn't. It was the start of erasure, disguised as love. The red flags weren't fireworks. They were whispers. Whispers I kept dismissing, like the time he told me that a dress I loved was too revealing for someone with a husband now. Or when he asked me to uninstall Instagram because married women don't need that kind of attention. And how every disagreement somehow became my fault. You're overthinking. You're so sensitive. Why do you always ruin good things? He'd laugh in front of his friends and say things like, "Don't mind her, she's dramatic," while I stood there, swallowing the sting. Once I tried to call him out on it. I said, "Why do you make me the joke every time we're out?" He smirked. "Because someone has to keep your ego in check." That night, I cried in the bathroom with the water running, and I told myself, next time, speak louder. But every time I tried, he made me feel like I was crazy for even noticing. Nadia, my older sister, was never fond of Liam. She's sharp-tongued and doesn't sugarcoat a thing. 3 months before the wedding, she pulled me aside and said, "He's too polished, too controlled. You sure you're not mistaking obsession for love?" I rolled my eyes and said, "Just because you had a bad marriage doesn't mean I will." She sighed. "It's not bitterness, it's pattern recognition." I didn't listen. I thought she just didn't get it. I didn't know she saw what I refused to see. Then there was Dean, Liam's best friend since college. He was always half drunk and too flirty, but one night at a party, he leaned in close and slurred, "You're lucky, you know. Liam doesn't usually settle down. He must have seen something tame in you. Tame, like I was a project he could control. And Kara, my co-worker, the quiet type who notices things others miss." We were standing by the copy machine one afternoon when she looked at me and said softly, "You always smile when you talk about your husband, but your eyes look scared." I laughed it off, said I was just tired. But that comment stayed with me like a pebble in my shoe. The anniversaries told their own story. On our first, he forgot completely. Said work was more important than some cliché celebration. I cooked dinner myself, ate alone. Told myself he was just stressed. On our second, he took me out. But the entire evening, he kept looking at my waistline. When I ordered dessert, he whispered, "You really want to keep gaining like that?" I pushed the cake away and smiled. But it was our third. The one that shattered every illusion, because love doesn't forget. Love doesn't mock. Love doesn't force. I had always convinced myself that what we had was complicated, passionate, intense. But it was never love. It was ownership, camouflaged as commitment. Every time I blinked, a little piece of me faded. Every time I stayed silent, he grew louder inside my mind, and by the time he served me divorce papers, it didn't even feel surprising. It felt rehearsed. He looked at me and said, "You're too much work. I need someone who isn't broken." But I wasn't broken. I was buried, under the weight of trying to please someone who was never going to be pleased. And now that I've clawed my way back to the surface, he has no idea what I'm capable of. Silence can feel louder than any scream, especially when it's the kind that follows destruction. No closure, no apology, not even a conversation. Just a door slammed shut and everyone pretending they never heard it open in the first place. After the divorce, Liam blocked me on everything. My number, my email, even Venmo. He told our mutual friends that I was unstable. "Too emotional," he said. "Apparently, bleeding during your own assault is now a character flaw. One of his friends, a girl I barely knew, sent me a DM 2 weeks later that read, "I hope you get help." Just that. Nothing else. Like my existence was a public breakdown they all had front row seats to. I didn't fight back. I didn't post long rants or defend myself online. I just disappeared, because shame doesn't scream. It burrows deep, makes you question your memory, your voice, your worth. I was left with silence, shame, and about $14,000 in shared debt that magically became my responsibility after he moved on. And for a while, I believed I was the problem. Until Ava texted me one night with a string of screenshots, and the world as I knew it split open again. "Check your email," she wrote. Her message was followed by, "I knew it. I always knew." There it was, Liam's new Instagram account. Private, but not to Ava. Photo after photo of him with Kaylee, his assistant, the one he always said was like a little sister, the one who giggled every time he made a joke at my expense. In one photo, she was on his lap holding a wine glass. Caption, "Found my peace." In another, she was wearing my necklace, the one he got me for our first Christmas together. He used to say it was the only thing that looked perfect on me. And in one video clip, he kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're everything she wasn't." I stared at my phone until my vision blurred. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just froze. The same way I had the night he forced himself on me. I looked in the mirror that evening, really looked. I barely recognized the woman staring. Back. Eyes dull, hair lifeless, skin pale, like all the color had bled out of me and into the walls of that house he left me in. For the first time, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt played, and I hated that I let him do it so quietly. Flashbacks started playing in my head like a cruel movie reel. I remembered how he used to say, "I like women who are low maintenance," every time I bought something new for myself. How Kaylee once giggled when he called me dramatic in front of the office staff. How Dean, his so-called best friend, would smirk whenever I walked into the room. Like they all knew I was on borrowed time. It wasn't just Liam, it was a performance, and everyone had a part. Kaylee was the type who made sugar feel like poison. Big eyes, soft voice. She'd act clueless, but there was always calculation in the way she clung to his arm when I was around. Once I heard her laugh and say, "If I were your wife, I'd never complain." He didn't correct her. He smiled. Then there was Marjorie, Liam's mother. She always looked at me like I'd tracked mud into her living room. She never liked that I had opinions, that I had a job, that I wasn't from old money, as she once so gracefully put it. During our second year of marriage, she pulled me aside at a dinner party and said, "You've softened him. He used to be driven." I didn't realize she meant, "You've made him human, and I hate you for it." When it all started crashing down, I didn't have many places to turn. I was too embarrassed to tell most people the truth. Even Ava, as fiercely loyal as she was, couldn't patch up the bleeding inside my chest. So I went to therapy. And that's where I met Dr. Ellen. She must have been in her 60s. White, curls, soft cardigans, and the kind of eyes that didn't miss anything. She never pitied me. She just listened, really listened, in a way Liam never had. One day, I sat there trembling and told her everything. The manipulation, the violence, the betrayal, the shame. She looked at me gently and said, "You keep asking why he did this. The better question is, why you think you deserved it." That line, it cracked something open in me. Because I didn't deserve it, I never had. And the more I sat with that truth, the more I stopped trying to rewrite the story into something less painful. I stopped saying, "We had our good times," because even the good times were laced with control. I stopped saying, "He didn't mean to," because he did. Every time. He meant to make me small, And now? Now I see it all clearly. They weren't confused. They weren't unaware. They were comfortable watching me fade. But the thing about a woman who paints, even if you strip her walls bare, she'll always find a way to create color again. And this time, I'm painting something he'll never be able to erase. Revenge doesn't have to scream. It doesn't even have to shout. Sometimes, the sharpest justice is the kind you carry out in silence. One breath, one step, one receipt at a time. After. Ava sent me the screenshots. After the mirror no longer recognized me. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I rebuilt. Quietly. The first thing I did was unpack my old paint set, the one he told me to put away because it made the house smell weird. I sat on the floor of my apartment, a small rental with chipped tiles and no heat in the bathroom, and I dipped the brush in color again. It didn't look like much, but it felt like breath. Then I enrolled in therapy, properly this time, not just crying once a week. I committed. Dr. Ellen became more than a therapist. She became my mirror. She called out my blind spots, the excuses I still made for him. She said, "You're allowed to heal and still hold someone accountable. They're not opposites." And I started a support group, online, anonymous, small at first. Just women who had been made to feel crazy, emotional, unworthy. We shared stories, patterns, names. And that's when I found out Liam had cheated long before our 3rd anniversary. Kaylee wasn't the beginning. She was just the final upgrade in a long string of lies. One woman sent me a photo from 2 years ago. Liam at a bar, hand on some woman's thigh. Time-stamped, a month after he proposed to me. Another sent screenshots of conversations where he bragged about needing a girl who listens without talking back. And I started collecting it all, quietly, carefully. I organized everything, dates, texts, financial inconsistencies, photos. I knew he lied about the money. But now, I had proof. That's when Elias came in. He was a friend of Ava's, young, sharp, carried himself like he'd been born in a courtroom. He offered pro bono help. Said, "Abuse doesn't always leave bruises, but the law doesn't care about that unless we show them what does bleed. Money." We went through every account Liam had access to. Turns out he'd hidden over $40,000 in undeclared assets. He rerouted bonuses into offshore savings. Even claimed I refused spousal support, which was a lie I'd never even seen in writing until Elias showed me the final divorce draft. I hadn't refused it. He'd just made sure the paperwork said I did. Elias leaned back in his chair and said, "We have enough to reopen the case. You ready?" I was. More than ready. But revenge wasn't just about courtrooms. It was about truth. And truth deserved to be louder than shame. So I reached out to Emily. We used to paint together. Years ago, she was now a journalist. Fierce, passionate, and the kind of woman who didn't blink at fire. I told her everything. Not with names, not yet. We published a piece, "The Silent Weight of Emotional Abuse." An anonymous story. Mine. Itoi. Went viral. Women started messaging the outlet. So many said, "This sounds like someone I know. I think I'm her." But one message stood out. It was from an old colleague of Liam's, and all it said was, "If this is about who I think, it is. HR needs to see this." 3 days later, Liam called Ava. Blocked number, panicked voice. "She's trying to destroy me," he yelled. Ava put him on speaker. I listened, silent. "She's twisting everything. That article, that's her. I know it. Tell her to back off." Ava didn't flinch. She just said, "Maybe if you hadn't treated her like garbage, you wouldn't be. Choking on your own secrets now." And then she hung up. I moved forward with the lawsuit. Elias filed a motion to uncover hidden assets. We subpoenaed his personal records, found charges for gifts, flights, hotel stays, all linked to Kaylee. The court froze his accounts. He panicked. Kaylee left him 2 weeks later. No warning, just gone. He showed up to court looking different. Hair messy, eyes bloodshot. He wore a cheap suit, not the polished, smug man I once married. This version of Liam looked exactly like the mess he always blamed others for. During the hearing, he stood there and scoffed. "She's doing all." "This to ruin me," he told the judge. "This is personal. She's unstable. She's dragging me through the mud for revenge." I looked straight at him, my voice calm, controlled. "No, you ruined yourself. I'm just documenting it." The judge didn't smile, didn't blink. But his eyes narrowed when Liam mocked my therapy sessions, when he referred to my support group as a pity party for broken women. The judge leaned forward and said, "Mocking mental health support is not only inappropriate, Mr. Reyes, it's revealing." Liam's employer caught wind of the trial. HR launched an investigation. Apparently, Kaylee wasn't the only one he had a professional relationship with. A second assistant filed a formal complaint. By the end of the month, Liam was let go. Not fired exactly, mutually separated. But we both knew the truth. I didn't need to ruin him. He just needed an audience, and the best part? I never raised my voice. I never posted a dramatic video. I didn't chase him or beg for closure. I became the mirror he couldn't look into, and when the world saw him clearly, he crumbled. Ava said to me one night as we sat on the balcony watching the city hum below us, "You're not crazy. You were just too kind." For a man like that, I smiled, sipping my tea. "You know what's funny?" I asked her. "I thought revenge would feel like fire, but it feels like peace." Because revenge wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about remembering I was never broken. He just convinced me I was easier to control that way, and now that I'm whole again, he has to live with what he did. And worse, he has to live knowing I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, in energy. Like justice could only be handed out when everything else, sympathy, distraction, charm, had been stripped away. Liam sat across from me, pale, fidgeting, alone, no Kaylee, no friends. No smug smirk this time, just the quiet, sinking weight of consequences finally catching up to him. I stood when they called my name. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I looked the judge in the eye and said, "He violated my body, my trust, and my dignity." I paused, let the silence hang heavy. And for the first time, I'm no longer scared of him. Liam scoffed, like he couldn't believe I was still talking, like he still thought he controlled the room. But no one looked at him, not even the clerk. The judge leaned forward and began to read the ruling. Words like willful misconduct, undisclosed financial assets, pattern of psychological harm. Then the final line, in favor of the plaintiff. And just like that, it was done. I was awarded financial compensation, more than I expected, less than I deserved. But enough. Enough to rebuild in ways he could never reach. And then came the second blow. The court clerk handed Liam a sealed envelope, his employer's letterhead. Termination, effective immediately. HR had concluded their investigation. He was officially, publicly, undone. He didn't even pack up his things. Security did. Outside the courthouse, the sun was too bright. People were milling around, some watching, some whispering, and then I heard footsteps behind me, fast, desperate. "Wait," he called. I didn't turn. He stepped in front of me, breathing hard, eyes glassy. No mask this time. Just a man exposed. He said, "I was stressed. I didn't mean to hurt you." I tilted my head, looked him in the eye. "You already did," I said quietly. "But I survived you." I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "Now you'll learn how that feels." He blinked, but there was nothing left to say, because power once lost doesn't return to cowards. I turned, walked away, and this time, he didn't follow, because he knew. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was his consequence. Sometimes healing doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like a small apartment in a new city. Fresh sheets, unopened paint, and silence that doesn't feel like punishment anymore. I moved away from everything that reminded me of him, not to escape, but to breathe again. The first gallery. To feature my work, called it emotionally raw. The opening piece, a swirl of crimson, gold, and ash, was titled Red Means Rebirth. Ava stood beside me that night, her hand in mine. She whispered, "You painted your way out of the fire." And she was right. I didn't just survive him. I recreated myself in the ashes of what he tried to destroy. People ask if I'd ever forgive him. I don't know. But I've stopped waiting for that answer to set me free. Because the truth is, I used to think survival meant staying quiet. But survival, real survival, is choosing yourself every single day. Even when the person who hurt you told you that you weren't worth saving. And now, every brushstroke, every breath, every boundary I protect, that's my revenge, that's my rebirth.